Russia's military losses are becoming clearer as the Ukraine conflict continues. The conflict that was supposed to be swift and decisive has become long and bloody. Since the invasion began, the numbers have escalated, putting a huge strain on Russia's military. Join us as we examine Russia's military losses, their numbers, and their wider effects. Russia-Ukraine war casualties rising. Putin initially thought the battle would last a few weeks with few losses. Both sides and independent publications reported rising casualties throughout months of hard attritional battle. Putin presumably thought Russian deaths wouldn't exceed a few hundred or thousand due to his severe underestimation of the war's duration and intensity. But then the real numbers came in. Russia and Ukraine may wish to change the narrative because the world was focused on the situation until Israel waged war on Hamas. One of the initial Russian reports in June 2022 reported only 5,900 military casualties. However, US and UK reports put the figure closer to 15,000. Ukrainian reports claimed that 3,000 Russian soldiers had died in the first months of the war. Which figure is correct? A study in the peer-reviewed scientific journal PNAS suggested that each country displays its losses in a certain way. Ukraine reports roughly twice as many Russian casualties, but doesn't favor them. This may be an attempt to attract support from EU and NATO states that provide military aid to Ukraine. Russia grossly underreports soldier casualties at 0.3% of actual casualties. Thus, Russian figures should be approximately tripled to achieve a close estimate. Russian media reports Ukrainian casualties at a staggering 4.3 to 1, leading Russians to assume there are more than 4 times as many casualties as there are. Getting accurate Russian casualty counts from Ukrainian or Russian media can be difficult due to official media agencies number fudging to advance their war goal. Fortunately, unauthorized Russian media and military reports or independent media reports can illuminate the reality. Russian reports about the Wagner Force, a government-funded private military force, were remarkable. Yevgeny Prigozhin, Wagner's then leader, revealed in a May 2023 report that was mostly unauthorized by official media that Wagner lost 22,000 troops and injured 4,000 more. That report and Wagner's magnitude compared to the Russian military led UK and US media to estimate that Russia lost 12,000 men by August 2023 and wounded 17,000. This could confirm the PNS study's estimate of 77,000 Russian casualties by February 2023. Thus, UK and US media estimates were accurate, albeit real numbers are harder to ascertain. Independent BBC and Mediazona casualty estimates. BBC Russia and Mediazona, an independent news outlet, investigated combat casualties. The BBC went beyond field reports and military bulletins to document every casualty on both sides. This required reports, military records, the events that led to the casualties, and local reports, which were likely more nuanced and detailed. Reporters searched graveyards, parades, and war memorials nationwide for new names and graves of the recently deceased. Investigators also looked for social media posts from departed relatives and friends and local newspaper obituaries. The extensive search required naming each victim. Now, numbers weren't just fleeting thoughts. They were now actual people who had died for their nation, no matter how faulty. This strict set of standards caused numerous casualties to be omitted because investigators couldn't verify Russian or Ukrainian reports. With the BBC's assistance, the BBC Russia Mediazona report is the closest to the actual tally of Russian soldier losses, if not lower due to the challenges in collecting the precise information. Those on the list were probable Russo-Ukrainian war casualties. BBC Russia estimated that Russia has lost 88,000 soldiers 20 months into the battle in October 2023. BBC Russia didn't estimate injuries, while U.S. news outlets estimated 17,000 injuries in August 2023, which was the most realistic estimate. Better yet, the information was precise enough for outlets to identify the slain troops' units. This provided a detailed appraisal of Russia's wartime efforts and average military strength. Early accounts of the battle showed that the most prevalent casualties were younger professional soldiers on the front lines, with an average age of 21. Later months in the report showed more Wagner Group ex-convicts and pilots dying than typical. This matters for two reasons. First, it showed that the Russian military, despite widespread efforts to conscript more soldiers, was bolstered by those unwilling to fight but coerced into the front lines. Inmates made up 18.6% of BBC and Mediazona casualties. This shows how desperate the Wagner Group is to staff its trained military with expendable meat shields for its more important warriors. Second, pilot deaths deprived Russia of highly specialized military soldiers it couldn't train in time to replace them. Some estimates say a combat-ready pilot costs $3 million and takes years. Each pilot downed by Ukrainian troops grounds part of Russia's Air Force. Medusa, another independent outlet, studied Russian war casualties with Mediazona. Medusa used Russian probate registries, which are used to inherit real properties and cars, unlike the BBC. Medusa estimated Russian excess mortality by counting probate registry open cases. Medusa found that Russia has 25,000 excess casualties by 2022, perhaps from the Russo-Ukrainian War. The publication also predicted 47,000 excess casualties by May 2023, 5 months after the first report, showing that casualties spiked in 2023. If these data are accurate, the BBC estimate of 88,000 casualties in October is likely accurate. But the war continues, and those are mid to late 2023 figures. The latest figures? BBC Russia reports that the total Russian casualty toll could reach 7,000 by February 2024. One more thing. When combined with projections of serious injuries that release soldiers, the Russian army could lose 30 to 1,000 soldiers. This amount matches U.S. news reports of 35,000 losses. This represents over 85% of Russia's 36,000 pre-invasion troops. The war cost Russia 53 T-500 of its predicted 7,000 casualties over 24 months. The Iraq War 2013-17 has 595 casualties each year, whereas the Syrian Civil War 2011-present has 433,736. Including Ukraine's losses, the annual casualties total 95,000. The Russo-Ukrainian War is the deadliest 21st century battle, surpassing the Tigray War in Ethiopia. The amount of human casualties only partially reflects Russia's losses from invading Ukraine. Wartime equipment and infrastructure losses have also proved severe. Significant Russian military equipment losses. Russia lost half its battle-ready tanks a year into the war, hampering its capacity to launch a coordinated onslaught, according to a February 2023 assessment. This contributed to today's prolonged battles. In April 2023, another source claimed Russia lost almost 10,000 tanks, vehicles, artillery, and drones. Due to heavy losses, the Russian military had to redeploy certain Soviet and Cold War-era tanks, which were museum pieces in 2022. This greatly reduces Russian military power. The late 80s and 90s saw the development of new anti-tank weapons, which rendered the T-54s less useful. The UK, France, and the US have been slowly supplying Ukraine with the most deadly weapons, making a T-54 obsolete. In tank-to-tank combat, the T-54's 100mm cannons hardly penetrate current armor. Despite its rarity, the T-54 nevertheless threatens troops, light, unarmored tanks, and vehicles like the Soviet-era Grad launcher both sides use. Ukraine has restored most of its old weapons, such as the T-55, but its fleet possesses powerful 105mm L7 guns that can penetrate modern armor. Ukrainian tanks have improved engines and tactical equipment, leaving Russia behind in frontline technology. Russia is reportedly hoarding tanks and saving them for later use. Russia has taken out of cold storage its freshly built T-90s and older T-62, T-72, and T-80s. Since most of the frontline forces are infantry, Russia is losing more soldiers every day. This may indicate that Russia is building up tanks for a last push and utilizing its men as cannon fodder to weaken Ukraine's fortifications. Declining Russian military power. This may seem like a dubious military plan, but Russia possesses 4 times the population of Ukraine. Not everyone can be recruited, but the attritional character of the battle could help Russia gain momentum since it can take larger losses and regroup later. Multiple waves of conscription have been conducted throughout the country, usually in low-density areas. This is partly owing to lower earnings outside big cities, usually $500 per month compared to $1,200 in Moscow. Military contracts pay up to $2,500 per month, making it profitable to lower personnel in remote districts. Other Medusa reports imply that the Russo-Ukrainian war is more likely to kill individuals in remote districts. For every Muscovite who dies in the war, 275 Baratia and 350 Tuva, 2 destitute regions populated by minorities, die. Not just the impoverished have suffered in the battle. People are fleeing Russia to dodge conscription after the country was shocked by the conscription operations. Russia's attempts to mislead the public about the conflict have hurt many more. The authorities have banned memorials for the dead and information about Russia's military efforts in extreme circumstances. Over 900,000 Russians have departed the nation since the invasion, according to estimates. Most of these folks can afford pricey tickets or other legal ways to leave the nation. As middle-class residents, they work in IT and services, which generate significant tax revenue. Not only is this a severe blow to Russia's economy, long-term military and economic losses for Russia. Despite Russia's economy remains relatively strong, much of its resources are directed toward the war, resulting in ongoing trade difficulties and significant losses in labor and equipment. In 2023, Russia's central bank reported an 11.1% inflation rate, though some estimates suggest it may be as high as 60%, with food prices rising 75% from 2022. If this continues, excessive inflation could lead to economic collapse. To combat this, Russia's central bank has raised interest rates to 15%, though they were as high as 20% during the war's onset. Deposit rates in Russia have surged to 32%, much higher than in the UK 9%, as citizens are forced to save, further reducing disposable income. Despite these struggles, Russian media claims economic growth, with the IMF reporting faster growth than any G7 country. However, this is unsustainable, and Russia's economy may remain strong enough to support military operations, but will result in a highly centralized and imbalanced economy. The war's impact has not significantly affected daily life in Moscow, but this could change as Russia is forced to recruit more from major cities, where support for the economy is crucial. Public awareness of the war's consequences may erode the propaganda sustaining Russia's economy. China is a key factor in Russia's current situation, forcing Russia to export oil and gas at low prices. Europe's view of Putin's rule is weakening, and Russia faces uncertainty, with equipment delays and potential Chinese dominance. China might push for control over Siberian resources or even invade Russia, further diminishing its global influence. Russia's economy will continue to suffer from losses, injuries, and emigration, while its future remains unpredictable. Russia is in peril due to heavy losses in lives and equipment and a declining economy. Without major adjustments, the Russian military will struggle. Your thoughts on the situation? Comment your thoughts below. For the newest global military insight, like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.